Welcome back. My first guest is always leading off, my leadoff hitter, Mr. Luke Jones. Luke, welcome in.
Dennis, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, my friend. Caught an Orioles game Tuesday night with a gunner, Henderson leadoff homer. It was also the night that the announcement came at the stadium that uh, the great Brooks Robinson had passed away. I know you have strong feelings about that and sentiment, as we all do.
No question about it, Dennis. First and foremost, full disclosure, I never watched Brooks Robinson play. I was born in 1983. I was technically in Cooperstown for his Hall of Fame induction that summer. My mom gave birth to me about 2 months later.
How fitting.
But yeah, no question about it. But I think anyone, and as I wrote at BaltimorePositive.com, I think anyone with any kind of meaningful Baltimore roots, whether you've lived here, whether you're from here, whether you've spent time here, whether you know people from Baltimore, I think chances are you either Brooks Robinson was your hero or he was the hero to at least one person that's meaningful in your life. And I think for me, and why I was emotional about this, I've encountered Brooks a few times. My story's not unique to anyone else who's encountered Brooks. Just an absolute gentleman, a gem of a human being. I don't think I've ever heard a bad story about him, with any fan or person interacting with him. But he was my father's hero. Both sets of grandparents adored him. My mom adores him to this day. And I think what made this difficult, what made it bittersweet, not just because the Orioles, the current club, is in such a great position right now, but I think when you lose someone like Brooks Robinson, I think it was personal for so many people because it's not just thinking of him, it's also remembering our loved ones who aren't with us anymore who loved him so much. I had a chance. My very first Orioles game that I covered as a media member is 2010. The home opener, the Orioles were recognizing the 40th anniversary of the 1970 World Series, which of course was the Brooks Robinson World Series. He was MVP in that brilliant series against the Reds. And, I felt compelled, and maybe now looking back at it, maybe a little overzealous as a media member, trying not to act like a fanboy or anything like that. But I felt compelled to go up to Brooks and introduce myself just as a media member, but more so, it was about just wanting to say to him, thank you. You were my dad's hero, and my dad meant the world to me. At that point in time, he had passed away 6 years prior to that. And I just wanted to say to Brooks that how much he meant to my dad and how much I
Sure.
appreciated that. And my goodness, Dennis, that's a sentiment that he's probably heard from people in various shapes and forms thousands of times. You're talking about someone that was in, the public eye for nearly 7 decades and, became an iconic figure, midway through his career, if even that long. He could have brushed that off and just, said a polite thanks and been on his way, but he stopped. He looked me in the eye, patted me on the shoulder as we were old friends, and that's how Brooks treated anyone when you met him. And he thanked me for sharing that and expressed his condolences to my family. And that's something that I get a lump in my throat thinking about that. Even before this week, I would have said that. But boy, we're gonna miss him. And I think Jim Palmer said it best prior to Tuesday night's game, where he said, we're not really going to lose Brooks Robinson from the standpoint of the memories, the impressions, just the way he treated people. And he said it as one of those young Orioles in the mid 60s that came up, and the Orioles were on the cusp of becoming a dynasty for the better part of close to 2 decades. He said that they all wanted to be like Brooks Robinson. And I think from a character standpoint, just from a human being standpoint, I think that was, that was kind of a telling statement, and I think the world would definitely be a better place if we all acted a little more like Brooks Robinson every day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the same way that you do. The connection that he had with our parents, and still, I'm a little bit older than you, but I've met him several times. Had the pleasure of speaking to him several times. Got some autographed baseballs from him. Not sure where they are these days, but being in the car business, I missed a lot of opening days because of work obligations, Luke. But years ago, probably about 20 years ago, I was in a suite, and he stopped in for an opening day and signed some autographs and spent some time with the kids. Just a phenomenal, humble, genuine. human being, and I even miss him when he was announcing games. Who could forget him saying fastball against Fazzball, the only way that Brooks could say it. And the nice thing is he was able to on his way out before he got his wings, he was able to see an Orioles team that's very much the talk of baseball. I saw a report, not sure who the writer was. Not that it means much, but he gave the Orioles A+ heading through the postseason and gave a half a dozen teams A's. But they're well regarded, they're respected, they're fun to watch, and um, they're making a difference. So it's just a nice. If he's going to go out, at least it's not when a team is doing terrible. Because he'd love the game. But one thing that I do recall now, Luke, thinking back on it, as he was signing baseballs in our suite, when the game was going on, like when something was happening, like when a player was up, he would stop, he would watch the pitch, the play, and then he'd go back to signing. He loved baseball that much.
He really did, and Brandon Hyde talked about this a little bit after Tuesday night's game, where, as you pointed out, they won 1-0, and I think Brooks I saw what the factoid that he had been, drove in the solo run in more 1-0 games than anyone in baseball history, which, is a bit of a random fact, but
Sure.
I thought it was kind of neat though that the Orioles won 1-0 then on Tuesday night in the wake of that. But Brandon Hyde talked about it, and the last time Brooks had been around the club was last year, in the flesh, but it was late. It was later last year, and Hyde said how Brooks knew all the players. You could tell, and think about it. When public figures, whether we're talking about politicians, celebrities, actors, whoever, there are times where they'll act like a fan, but then you hear them talk and you just okay, they don't watch a whole lot. And look, that's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to even be disparaging saying that, but in the case of Brooks Robinson, until and in recent months, it's since come out that his health hadn't been great. But so recently, who knows? But he certainly was following the rebuild and saw them turn the corner last year from the moment that Adley Rutschman arrived, as you and I've talked about so many different times. And, all the players, you could tell that it meant something to them. And look, I mean, these guys are all in their early to mid or late 20s. I mean, and certainly most of them not from Baltimore. So you can't expect them to have that much of a deep knowledge of Orioles history. But if you're someone that loves baseball, if you're someone that's grown up around baseball, Brooks Robinson. I mean, not to shift gears, but John Harbaugh even talked about how when he first arrived in Baltimore, he took his daughter Allison out trick or treating. She was like 6 at the time. Brooks Robinson answered the door at his home, just for trick or treaters. I mean, it just speaks to and John being a baseball fan that grew up a Tigers fan, he knew who Brooks Robinson was, obviously. So, I think it meant something to these players. And while they didn't know Brooks intimately, he had been around them last year and had told them how excited he was to see the team having turned the corner, being on the other side of the rebuild, knowing that so many great things were in store. And I think certainly they're going to be wearing a number 5 jersey patch on their sleeve for the rest of the regular season and into the postseason. They had the number 5 banner up on the warehouse immediately Wednesday night. So there are going to be plenty of reminders of Brooks that the team will have, and I think again more so for individual fans thinking about Brooks, thinking about loved ones who loved Brooks, and those emotions, which can be bittersweet, especially when you're talking about maybe the Orioles making the World Series for the first time in 40 years. I mean, that's where we are. We're talking about a division-winning team. As you and I talk, they haven't clinched yet, but magic number at 1. So you hope by the time people are listening to this, maybe later on in the weekend, they've already popped the champagne and know they're going to be the number 1 seed and all that. I mean, it's going to happen at this point in time. Just when is the question. But just knowing that this team is, this is where the Orioles are right now is where the Ravens were, where we thought the Ravens were in 2019 with Lamar Jackson when they went 14-2, which is probably a good lesson to say, don't take this for granted. No, that doesn't mean that the sky's falling if they don't win the World Series this year, but my goodness, seize the opportunity, seize the chance to be the number 1 seed, and you get this bye and a little bit of rest here over the course of the next week to set up your pitching staff, get guys off their feet a little bit. and roll the dice and see what happens, because nothing's guaranteed next year or the year after that or the year after that. As much as it looks like the window is wide open, and I do think it is, let's be clear, you never know what's going to happen in the future. But boy, exciting times for the Orioles, but also the bittersweet feeling that accompanies that with the loss of the late great Brooks Robinson.
Certainly, Luke. And as the Orioles barrel into the playoffs, you have to feel good in the playoffs on nights where Kyle Bradish is pitching, Grayson Rodriguez. But beyond those two, uh, the starting lineup, your starting pitching rotation, rather, your bullpen, they have to make some decisions about who they're going to carry into the postseason with them and who's going to be left out.
Yeah, I mean, I that's part of it. And let's be clear, I mean, all teams are facing these decisions to varying degrees, right? I mean, whether it's on the pitching side, whether it's certain positions, you have a little more uncertainty. But that's why, again, get this thing clinched and sewn up officially, and then you have a few, if you can do that, and do that for the opener against Boston, you've got a few days then to look at your bullpen, to evaluate this a little bit. I mean, as you said, I mean, Kyle Bradish has been fantastic as things stand. Uh, and he's in line to start on Sunday. I'm guessing he'll pitch, but you probably won't see him very long. Maybe he just pitches a couple innings, because you don't want him to go without pitching too long, assuming he's going to be the game one starter in the division series, as he should be. He deserves it. He's been their ace. But it's pretty wild to think, pending what happens in his potential final appearance, that he would be the first Oriole starter to go, as many innings as he's gone, finishing with an ERA below 3 since Mike Messina way back when. I mean, that just shows, one, it shows that Orioles starting pitching hasn't been very good for a long time, but it also shows what kind of year Kyle Bradish has had. And then you look at what Grayson Rodriguez did on Wednesday night. I mean, it didn't go as long into the game, 5 2/3, but he pitched well. And you look at where he's finished with an ERA of what, 4.35, when his ERA was, I believe, 7.35 when they sent him down in late May. I mean, what a turnover. So as much as we talked at the trade deadline and last off season and starting pitching, do they have enough? And look, there's still questions, to your point. I think John Means is going to be in the rotation based on how he pitched in Cleveland, and I think he's kind of deserved that. And he's looked, I wouldn't say peak John Means, but he looks like he's on his way. He's looked, to me, he's looked progressively better in each of his starts since coming back to the major league rotation. Kyle Gibson, I would think he's probably the fourth starter, but you still have Dean Kramer. Where does he fit in? If he's not in the rotation, he's probably in the bullpen. So what does that look like? So they have, beyond Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez giving them that high end upside that you'd like to think you're going to have. Again, they're young guys. I mean, a second year guy and a rookie. So, you don't quite know how anyone's going to respond in the postseason. And part of that has to do with, you've been at this for 6 months now. Guys are tired. I mean, we saw that with the bullpen. It was painfully obvious on the last road trip how tired the bullpen was. So, but you don't know what's going to happen. But those are the upside guys. But in the meantime, what's the rest of the rotation look like? What's the bullpen going to look like? I mean, the guys like Cano and Coulomb, yeah, they're going to be in the bullpen, but where does Felix Batista potentially fit into this again? I think it's a long shot, but we'll continue to monitor that. But you have Jack Flaherty, you have Tyler Wells, who looked good pitching the ninth inning on Wednesday night. I think he can factor into the bullpen. So even whenever they clinch, whether it's Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, or heaven forbid, it goes into the final game of the season. I mean, you hope it's not that kind of scenario when your magic number's one. They do have a few games here, Brandon Hyde does, and Mike Elias, to evaluate a little bit here. Take a look at who you think is going to, one, just be part of your bullpen, and two, how do they fit? Where do you think they can fit in best? So there are a lot of moving parts to this, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown, but I'll remind everyone, those are great questions to have, because right now the Boston Red Sox are in town for the last series of the season for them, and they've already fired their general manager. They're playing out the string. So the Orioles just 2 years ago, it's incredible to think they were a 110 loss outfit, worst team in baseball. Understanding, yes, some pieces were on the way, but it still felt like this, where they are right now, still felt like it would be a little bit further away than what it ultimately ended up being. So to go from 110 losses 2 years ago to on the cusp of 100 losses and the AL East title and the number one seed in the AL, boy, it can't be more exciting if you're an Orioles fan, especially if you suffered through these last several seasons where they weren't just bad, they were historically bad. So for those fans who endured that, I'll remind everyone, enjoy this because it's a heck of a lot of fun. And again, nothing's guaranteed in the future. So the Orioles need to try to seize the opportunity the best they can.
And Luke, of course, it's not only the pitching staff they have to look at, the 12 players they're going to carry there, but also the hitters, right? There's some guys towards the bottom that they have to make some decision on, whether it's McKenna, Kierstad, or somebody else maybe missing here.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, they just activated Ryan Mountcastle off the IL, so he's he'll get the start against Chris Sale, and hopefully the shoulder issue is behind him. I know he took batting practice a couple days ago to really test it out and really let that shoulder go, so to speak. And he hit the ball really hard. Exit velos of over 100 miles per hour, which that's Ryan Mountcastle like. So we'll see how that looks. But you just brought it up, and I think it's a fascinating discussion. I mean, there's not nearly as much drama overall with the position side, right? I mean, you know who they're at least starting 8 every night, and then you can kind of talk about Frazier or Westberg or Arias kind of fitting into that other spot. But at the same time, you do look at the back end of the roster. They've clearly prioritized Jorge Mateo because we've talked about that for 3 months about, well, they clearly want him on the postseason roster. And we saw that on Wednesday night. He stole a base and, scored, so you get that kind of potential with him coming off the bench as a pinch runner. But I think Heston Kjerstad's a really interesting one for me. I mean, you mentioned Ryan McKenna. You just look at those two, and McKenna was just option, but with the timing of it, he would be able to come back in time for the division round if they want to have him on their ALDS roster. And keep in mind, they reset the roster for each series. But I think, what does Brandon Hyde want there? Do you want that speed defense guy, which McKenna is, but very, very limited with the bat? Or do you want, Heston Kjerstad's power potential coming off the bench? Now, it's interesting to look at it because it's not as though the Orioles have a ton of guys in their lineup that you're going to pinch hit for. And depending on the night, depending on the matchup, if it's a lefty starter, O'Hearn's not in the lineup usually because he's a left-handed batter. So Kjerstad would be the same deal. So, but we've seen him swing the bat pretty darn well, for a rookie, and considering how far he's come and everything he went through the last couple of years just to get to this point. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And part of that is also, Dennis, because you're specifically talking about the ALDS, it's a best of 5. Do you need to carry as many bullpen arms for a best of 5, knowing that there are a couple off days built in there? Or do you carry, one fewer bullpen arm, and then maybe you carry both those guys? We'll have to see how it plays out. But these are all the questions that Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias, the coaching staff, the front office, they'll be crunching the numbers, whether they're, you assume Tampa Bay is going to be the number 4 seed. So that's who they would face if Tampa Bay wins. But could it be Toronto? Or we'll see how the other wild cards shake out here over the final weekend. So, there's a little bit of flux there, but you're trying to project what the matchups are, which teams are a little heavier on left-handed starting pitching or right-handers. What do the bullpens look like? I mean, that all factors in. And certainly, the Orioles have decisions to make. But as I said, these are good decisions. These are exciting decisions that you have to make. And for them to be where they are right now, and for us to be talking about a postseason rotation, postseason bullpen, postseason bench, I mean, that is really, really exciting, especially knowing that they're the number 1 seed, not a team that, like I thought might have been the case if they had been in the postseason, maybe sneak in as the last wild card and maybe win, I don't know, 88 games or something like that. So they have exceeded expectations to such a dramatic degree, and they are so fun to watch. And I think they are a team that, the rest of baseball's taken notice. And yeah, they've got their imperfections, but they also have the areas of their team that are so strong, and a big reason why we're talking about as the weekend ends, I assume the first 100 plus win team that the Orioles have had since way back in 1980. First in my lifetime, Dennis, which is saying something as I turn 40 next week.
There you go. Speaking of 40, as we segue into football, it's been 40 years since the Colts left Baltimore, and I was at the stadium Sunday, as I usually am for home games. And I've got to tell you, the bitterness that I've had over the years about the Irsay family and what happened back in 1983 and being without football for 13 years is starting to subside for me. I don't have the same hatred. However, having said all that, this was a game that was clearly there to win. In fact, I feel like the Ravens snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in many instances. And boy, oh boy, we can plenty of blame to go around. No shortage of that, Luke.
No question about it. I mean, just disappointing. I don't think there's any. That's a bad loss. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. I mean, we can talk about the injuries and look, perhaps because they played so well in Cincinnati, we kind of forgot, or guys like me, and I picked the Ravens to win 24-13, whatever it was. I was wrong.
So was
Just like
Vegas.
I'm
I mean,
wrong a
they were
lot.
what? They were like an
Sure, exactly.
8.5 point favorite, and it was a nip and tuck game. Look, it was entertaining. I was happy with the overtime. I always love extra football. I just didn't love
Yeah.
the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you look at the number of injuries. But on the flip side, I mean, Indianapolis is without their starting quarterback. They're
Absolutely.
without they're without their Pro Bowl center. I mean, we're not talking. Let's
They're
face it.
running back. They're all pro running back too. Jonathan
Yeah,
Taylor.
John.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
on the PUP list with something related to money. but
right,
but
right.
yeah, I mean, you look at it, and I mean, I can't help but feel, and obviously so many people have focused on the end of regulation and Zay Flowers calling the fair catch and the breakdown in
Wow.
communication, and why the heck didn't John Harbaugh use a timeout there? But I keep coming back to the Kenyon Drake fumble, where
Right. I agree.
it looked, at that point in time, they had marched down the field on their opening drive. They had forced two Indianapolis punts on the Colts' first two possessions, and you're moving down the field again. At that point in time, if I just freeze frame midway through that Kenyon Drake catch and run, and I ask you, Dennis, what's more likely? This is going to be a 1 point game, or a tie game in overtime, or the Ravens blow them out? Right there, in that moment, you're saying the Ravens going to blow them out. I mean, this is looking
Absolutely.
like, a little 2019 like early on. He fumbles and the game completely changes after that. The offense was, for the most part, pitiful for the rest of the game. Not just with the fumbles, but they were inconsistent running the ball. They did not push the ball downfield whatsoever. I mean, look at Lamar Jackson's average depth of target. Zay Flowers had 8 catches, but for 48 yards. I mean, really? I mean, that's
Well,
that's
look,
not what you're looking
let
for.
me ask you this. I don't recall a single deep pass. Now, I get it. They were
Yeah.
playing a two deep zones. They had the safeties
Yeah.
back, but in sharp contrast, the prior week, Lamar Jackson threw a deep ball to a double covered Zay Flowers. It was a great
Yeah.
pass and a great catch. So just because they're playing a deep zone, they're double covering your best receiver, doesn't mean you don't take a shot. You can get a PI. Sure, the ball can get picked off as well, but not a single deep shot. And I don't want to hear we didn't have two starting linemen. There were times where Lamar Jackson did have time to
Yeah.
throw the ball downfield.
Yeah. I mean, the pass protection was not as good as in Cincinnati, but
Agreed.
right, it's not as though he had someone in his face on every single play. The pass protection wasn't great. It's not going to be when you're missing two linemen. Indianapolis would have loved to have Ryan Kelly at center. I mean, that's just the reality. But and for me, it doesn't even necessarily need to. It doesn't have to be a bomb like it was to Zay Flowers. I mean, just where was Mark Andrews in this? In a cover two, you should be testing the seam down the middle of the field, right? Over the linebackers and in front of the two deep safeties.
Yep.
And I mean, Indy showed different looks. I mean, they were in cover three and different looks at various points, but you know, it just was not a downfield passing game whatsoever. And I mean, the running game, other than Lamar himself, and we've talked about this so many times, and this was one of the tropes and common themes in the later years under Greg Roman, where it was just kind of Lamar putting on the cape, scrambling. But we saw how that worked. Yeah, he ran for 100 yards, and that's great, but they scored 19 points. What do you care about more, Lamar running for 100 yards or scoring into the 20s or 30, something like that? And let alone talking about the Miami Dolphins hanging 70 on Denver, which was just crazy. But I think it's a reminder. It is a week-to-week league. As disappointing as Sunday was, I think you do need to keep it in the proper perspective. As great as week two's win was, as bad as a week three loss as that was playing at home, they're a work in progress. I think for the most part, you're pleased with where the defense is, especially considering some of the injuries they've had there. Yeah,
Yes.
I get it. Zach Moss leaked out a couple times. Some of their run fits were bad, and that's why he ran for over 100 yards. But by and large, I mean, they held Indianapolis to one touchdown and 5 field goals. Even the Colts, and I get it, it's Gardner Minshew. Generally speaking, you'll take, you'd sign up for giving up 19 points a
Sure.
game every week, right? I mean, you'd sign up for that. So the defense wasn't perfect, but it's certainly of all the blame you can try to spread around, they get the smallest portion of the pie for me. I mean, it's the offense. Certainly, John Harbaugh with the gaff on the kick return following the safety, with the fair catch. Todd Monken, just running Melvin Gordon into the backs of offensive linemen over their last couple drives, and not being able to do anything at all with great field position in overtime. Again, the offense being the biggest culprit, the entire offensive production. I mean, Lamar was great with his legs, not so great as a passer. They had some critical drops, especially the Isaiah Likely, the drop in overtime. The special teams, Jordan Stout had some great punts, but when he needed to have a really good punt, he gave Indy great field position on their final drive of regulation to tie the game. So they just came up really small at some moments where they didn't even need to come up huge, but just don't come up small. Just do what you need to do. Don't beat yourself. And boy, they really beat themselves on Sunday. So you turn the page and you look ahead then to Cleveland. And let's face it, I mean, this is a Browns team that I want to see if I'm convinced that Deshaun Watson has turned the corner, which he played easily his best game as a Brown this past Sunday against Tennessee. But we know how that's looked. We know how it looked in week one and week two and the end of last year. But their defense, and I get it, they haven't been, they haven't played the Miami Dolphins or the San Francisco 49ers or any offense that you want to view as a juggernaut. But the numbers are still the numbers. And you're talking about a team that's only given up 10.7 points per game, and there are even some some of their offensive miscues in Pittsburgh the week before contributed to that. I mean, this is a team that their teams are struggling to even just get into the red zone against them, let alone trying to score a touchdown. So this is going to be a test for the Ravens. And the good news is Ronnie Stanley's back on the practice field. I'm not ready to say he's going to play because we
Right.
know in the past Ronnie's been a guy that takes a while to ramp up for whatever reason. But Linderbaum's back. That's good to see. Marcus Williams on the other side of the ball. We'll see if he's available. But this is a team that boy, they've got to protect Lamar Jackson. Whether it's Stanley and Linderbaum back or McCary and Mustafa being out there for another week. I mean, when you're talking about Myles Garrett and
Ugh.
that front, Zadarius Smith,
Yes.
that is quite the pass rush there. And this is going to be a week that group coupled with the fact that they're also number one in pass defense. I mean, they're giving up 111.7 passing yards per game, and I'm much more of a per attempt guy. I want to see the rate stats rather than just the volume stats. But you still look at that and say, wow, 111 passing yards per game. So, you know, this probably isn't the week that we're going to see the major offensive breakthrough. Although I certainly think, not saying the Ravens can't fare well enough to win the game by any stretch of the imagination, but you kind of look at that. This is probably going to be another game where Lamar Jackson's going to probably rest up his legs over these next few days because he's probably going to need to be using them, whether it's escaping pressure or it might just be no one open downfield, knowing that, yeah, Beckham's still not practicing. Rashad Bateman's dealing with the hamstring now. So, they might be limited in what they can do offensively. They're banged up at running back, as we know, with Justice Hill. Although Gus Edwards looks like he's okay and should be good to go with the being out of concussion protocol. So I think it's going to be an a typical AFC North game, Dennis. I think
Yep.
it's going to be a lot of ugly, a lot of physicality, a lot of defense being played on both sides, and we'll see how it plays out. But certainly a big challenge for the Ravens going on the road for the second of these three AFC North road games in a 4-week period. So this is a big one for the Ravens, and really big one, I think, for the Browns to they beat the Ravens on Sunday. You're talking about a team that, at the very least, and we'll see what happens with Cincinnati. We know what they've been dealing with Joe Burrow and the calf, and them getting off to an 0-2 start, although they got the win against the Rams. But, the Browns win this week. I think you can maybe not fully officially 100%, but you start to look at them and say, hey, they might be right there for the division. And we've talked about their talent, but maybe, just maybe, and again, it is still the Browns, but maybe that's a team that's starting to put it together a little bit.
I hope the Ravens realize that this is a game that the Browns have had circled on their calendar,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Grant Delpit, one of their safeties, he tweeted out the other day, "We're going to need the crowd to be very, very vocal, very loud to help us out." They understand the magnitude of this game in terms of, I mean, they've been the punching bag for the Ravens for many, many years now, and they're trying to turn the tide. What concerns me, Luke, in addition to all the talent they have on defense, is the addition of Jim Schwartz as coordinator. Now, Schwartz didn't do a great job as a head coach, and some guys are better coordinators than head coaches, and we know who they are, the usual suspects, not to taint him for life. But he has shown an ability to be able to come up with great defensive schemes and to get the players to buy in and play at a very high level. That does not bode very well for the Ravens offense.
It doesn't. And I mean, again, for me, it begins with that pass rush. I mean, Myles Garrett is on his way to being a Hall of Fame player. I mean, let's call it what it is. Darius Smith is a very, very good player, and the Ravens are intimately familiar with
Right. And he
Zadarius
should be
Smith.
very motivated to play against the Ravens too.
No doubt, especially how last year played out with
Yes.
the contract and whether they had an agreement or not, and the initial agreement being leaked and getting panned, and
It was very,
he
very,
wanted he
very,
wanted
very team
he,
friendly. They almost got
yeah,
over on him. They almost.
he wanted more money, and then it fell apart from there. But I think you look at it. I mean, Lamar Jackson has really struggled with pressure in the pocket this year, and let's be clear, most quarterbacks do, but he's been on the more extreme side of that so far this year. So that's with Jim Schwartz, though, you have that front four. He doesn't have to blitz. Now, that doesn't mean he won't blitz. That doesn't mean they won't mix it up and try to give Lamar all kinds of different looks. But this offensive line, however it's constructed on Sunday, they've got their work cut out for them. There's no question about that. And for Lamar Jackson, you want to get the ball out quickly and on time, but at the same time, and this is where we saw this kind of swing in the extreme, you want to be able to push the ball downfield some. You don't want to throw it to Zay Flowers 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. I mean, even Zay Flowers is going to struggle to
Sure he is.
to be overly productive. Like I said, 8 catches for 48 yards against the Colts, and it's not a knock on Zay himself. It's just the operation there. That sounds more like a Dennis Pitta, late career Dennis Pitta stat line right there. 8 catches, 6 yards per catch. I mean, that's not what you're looking for with Zay Flowers. He's too speedy, too athletic to settle for that. So they're going to have to balance using quick game, getting the ball out, hoping Lamar gets in an early rhythm as he did so well against Cincinnati, but also needing to be aggressive and having some longer drops and times where Lamar holds the ball a little bit longer in the pocket. They've got to hold on just long enough, and Lamar's got to stand in there and take a hit. And the other factor, Dennis, and this is where I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed to hear his answer. Lamar was asked on Wednesday about the fumbles early in the season, and he kind of said, well, they were in the pocket. So
Well, not
I
only
mean,
that,
and look, that's going to happen. If someone has an incredible rush from your blind side, every quarterback's prone to getting the ball knocked out from
right,
time to
of
time.
course,
But
of course.
he has 4 official fumbles and a 5th one that was wiped out by the penalty in Cincinnati. So that's too many for 3 games. And the pass protection hasn't been so bad that that's an acceptable number. So he's got to clean that up. I mean, they need to do it across, Kenyon Drake can't fumble. Sam Mustipher
Look,
can't have a bad
they
snap.
had Sunday's game. They had 4 fumbles. They
Yeah.
recovered 2 of them, but they still
Yeah.
had 4 fumbles. Right?
Can't have that.
That's not good. The other piece of this, Luke, is you as a fellow draftnik, you remember JOK out of Notre Dame,
Mhm.
Jeremiah Owasu Koromoa. I mean, the Browns drafted this guy in 2021 for the specific reason to spy on Lamar Jackson. So
Sure.
you build your team, and rightfully so, to win your division. Right? For years, the Ravens built their team to beat the Steelers. Well, the Browns have built their team to beat the Ravens. So you're going to have this JOK guy spying Lamar all over the field as well.
Yeah. No question about it. I mean, Jim Schwartz, say what you like you said, say what you want about him as a head coach, but he's a long time established high quality defensive coordinator, and that doesn't mean that he's going to figure out how to stop Lamar Jackson, because we've talked about this so many times over the last several years where, this defense or that defense, or they're going to do this. I mean, think back to the Chargers running the dime and quarter defense against
Sure.
the Ravens Lamar's rookie year. And we saw how, that never really turned out to be that worked on occasion. And some teams still use some of those elements, but, Lamar's a legit, top shelf, high quality quarterback. So, yeah, they're going to have to mix and match. But you're right. In the same way that the Ravens have built their defense to stop Cincinnati, with the way that they transition from wink with corners on an island to going to a lot more too high and more zone, and forcing the Bengals to dink and dunk down the field. You're right. This is a Cleveland defense that they built having in mind stopping not just the Bengals, but of course Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So we'll see how it plays out. I think this is going to be probably a relatively low scoring game. It's AFC North football. Both teams right now, let's call a spade a spade. Both teams are stronger on the defensive side of the ball. The Ravens might have all this potential and upside offensively, but they've done it one time in 3 games. The other 2 games, Houston was kind of up and down. It was
Uneven.
fine, but
Yeah.
certainly not overwhelming. And the offense, after the first 2 drives on Sunday against the Colts, was pretty bad. So, that the jury's still out. And look, that's okay for them to still be a work in progress. You're not peaking in week 3 or week 4, right? You want to be the best possible version of your team late in the season, but you want to make progress. And playing on the road against another AFC North team, whose defense has been absolutely lights out through 3 weeks. I get it. It's only 3 weeks, but it's still 3 weeks. And that's all we have to go off of right now. And, you want to be able to overcome, some of the injuries that they're still dealing with. It's looking like they're going to be light at wide receiver. I'm guessing there's a decent chance we're going to see a Laquan Treadwell elevated from the practice squad, because Beckham's not practicing this week and Bateman's dealing with the hamstring. And also they have 4 wide receivers on the practice squad right now. To me, that's a tell that they're probably not expecting Beckham and Bateman to go. And maybe I'm wrong on that. That's just, I haven't heard that, but why else would you have 4 wide receivers on the practice squad suddenly? So, it's not ideal. They're not fully healthy. It looks like they're getting some guys back this week, but they're still waiting on Marlon Humphrey and, some of the guys I just mentioned, but you got to go out and play. And the Cleveland Browns are not going to feel sorry for you on that front. So you need to go out and play good football. They have to play way cleaner football on the offensive side. They need their defense to rise to the occasion, as they did against Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. Deshaun Watson played really well this past week, but did not play very well weeks 1 and 2. So I'm sure Mike Macdonald, as much as we're talking about Jim Schwartz, Mike Macdonald will have plenty drawn up to try
Of
to
course.
confuse and throw Deshaun Watson off rhythm. So that's why I said I expect this to be a drag it out. I don't have my official score prediction just yet. You can check that out at BaltimorePositive.com. But I'm feeling 17-13 one way or the other. That kind of a game, and we'll see. We'll see what the weather forecast looks like come Sunday. Wouldn't expect it to be as ugly as playing in Cleveland in December, but you never quite know, I guess, on the lake. But I think this is, on paper, very much looks like a defensive-minded football game, and we'll see how it plays out, which probably means we'll end up seeing a game kind of like when they played on Monday Night Football a few years back when it was 42 to 35 or
Yes.
42 to 39, whatever it was. The famous Lamar coming out of the locker room game.
Luke, we talked about injuries at the onset of our segment here with the Ravens. They don't have to face Nick Chubb, which is huge. One of their best players in the league. Never mind at running back for them. Jerome Ford and now Kareem Hunt. They don't offer, I don't think, that much of a threat to the Ravens. But with that said, I was watching the Pat McAfee show a few days ago, and I saw Kyle Van Noy was on there, and, and now he's on the Ravens practice squad because they have some injuries with Ojabo and Owe as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I didn't mention that, and I intended to, but I mean, Oweh's still in a walking boot, from what I understand, so he's not playing this week. Ajabo, he was on the sideline in helmet and full pads and uniform for the duration of Sunday's game, but he played 4 snaps. So, he's listed as an ankle, but also the knee. So when you hear an ankle knee designation, Dennis, sometimes it makes me wonder, is that a little more of a high ankle sprain?
Yeah,
I'm trying to be football doctor here. I just play one on the radio, right? So let's be clear about that. But the fact that they brought in Kyle Van Noy, which isn't shocking. Of course, they visited with him back in the summer, and I think he's someone that was on their radar. I think they would have signed him then, but he was asking for more money. And that's typically how that works. And I can't blame veteran players at a certain stage in their career for wanting that. But it'll be interesting to see if he's active on Sunday. I think conventional wisdom would tell you, oh, well, they probably will need a couple weeks to ramp him up. But I'll remind everyone, it was right around this time last year that they signed Jason Pierre-Paul, and he ended up playing what, 55 snaps or something like that, because they were just, their numbers were
yeah,
so light at outside linebacker as they are right now. So I would not at all be shocked to see Kyle Van Noy on, elevated and on the game day roster on Sunday. We'll see how it plays out, of course, but he's a 10th year guy. He's 32 years old. Never been a great player, but he's been a solid to really good player, and obviously was on 2 Super Bowl teams for the Patriots. I mean, that's kind of where he's had his most success. But what I like about someone like him is experience coming off the edge, has also played off-ball linebacker. Heaven forbid something happens, to say a Patrick Queen or a Roquan Smith in the midst of the game. You could pivot there a little bit.
sure.
I asked Roquan about Van Noy and, how much he knew about him, and was highly complimentary. Just said he's a really smart player. Even in practice on Wednesday, was already calling some things out, which
Good.
may have been that right there may have been a tell that they're looking to get him ready to play, because otherwise he'd probably be running scout team as someone on the practice squad. So maybe a tell there that he's going to be up, but was complimentary of him and said that he absolutely believes he can help them. And we'll see how it plays out. I mean, they haven't put Owe or Ajabo on IR, so that leads you to believe that they're not going to be out here too long. But at the same time, their ankle injuries, especially for an edge rusher, coming off the edge and
Sure.
wanting to have power firing out of your stance, that's iffy. And next week, Tyus Bowser becomes eligible to return. But as we saw last year with the Achilles, not a guy that necessarily is ramped up quickly coming back from past injuries. So I'm not necessarily holding my breath that we see Bowser in week 5. So yeah, they're going to need someone like Kyle Van Noy, because I'm guessing what they saw from Tavius Robinson and Jeremiah Moon, where I'm not saying it was all bad by any stretch of the imagination. You're looking at a little bit higher there, especially these next couple weeks going up against teams that, as you pointed out with the Browns, even without Nick Chubb, team that still wants to run the football, and you need to make sure you're setting the edge, need to make sure your run fits are on point. And as I said, I mean, Zach Moss was able to get out, and Zach Moss is a good back. Let's be clear about that. But Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong and Kareem Hunt,
Right.
none of them are Nick Chubb. We understand that, but that's a good offensive line you're going up against. So certainly you need to be on point. You want to have guys that can set a good edge, and that I think they're quite optimistic that Kyle Van Noy, even if it's not this Sunday, certainly in the very near future, he's going to be a factor for them, being able to do that and maybe give them a little bit of juice as a pass rusher, although that's not as much his forte.
Luke, great stuff as always. I appreciate your time, thoughtfulness, and insight. Please tell our listeners where they can find you at WNST Baltimore Positive, all the great things you do, your blog, and everything else.
Absolutely. I encourage everyone to follow us at WNST. You can follow me personally at Baltimore Luke. Check out my blog at baltimorepositive.com, sponsored by Coons Ford of Baltimore. My latest on the Orioles as they close in on this AL East title and the #1 seed for the AL postseason. My personal thoughts on the passing of Brooks Robinson. Plenty of great Ravens coverage as well. Injury report. I'll have my 12 Ravens thoughts and a prediction for Sunday's game as the Ravens try to improve to 3-1, as the Browns try to get a huge statement kind of win in the AFC North as they're off to a good start. But you can check out all of that at BaltimorePositive.com. You want to be on the WNST Baltimore Positive Text Service, sponsored by Coons Florida Baltimore. If you are, you will get the final injury report of the week. As we've noted, a number of Ravens players still banged up. Another one, Kyle Hamilton, dealing with a back. I don't think it's a big issue, but we'll monitor that. We'll get the final injury report, game day inactives. Any notable Orioles roster moves will certainly send out, once they have their postseason roster sent late next week, we'll send that out. Any significant local sports news sent directly to your mobile device via the WNST Baltimore Positive Text Service, sponsored by Coons Florida Baltimore. And of course, anything throughout the week on AM 1570 with Nestor. Any Ravens players and coaches interviews from Owings Mills, Orioles interviews from Oriole Park at Camden Yards as they close out this final homestand, this final series of the regular season, and turn their sights towards October baseball for the first time in Baltimore since 2016, first division title since 2014. Lots of excitement. Check out all of that at BaltimorePositive.com.
All right, Luke, always great stuff, my friend. I'm sure we'll have a ton of things to talk about 1 week from now. Orioles playoffs, hopefully a Ravens win against the Browns, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about Ravens going to Pittsburgh. So it'll be Pittsburgh week, and Orioles. By the time you and I talk next week, we may know who their ALDS opponent is, or we may not. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But boy, a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, and I look forward to reconvening with you next week, Dennis.
You got it, my friend. There he goes. Luke Jones here, 1570 AM, Baltimore Positive WNST. We'll take a quick break and come back right after this.